Werner Heisenberg, the leader of the Uranium Project in the Nazi Germany during the World War II. He is believed to have been worked for Hitler to build nuclear weapons, but in this video I will show that in reality he did not want to build nuclear weapons, and this is based on very recent information published in a scientific journal on February 2nd, 2021. I already did a very long video about this subject with a lot of technical details, but maybe it's a bit inaccessible for the general public, so I decided to make this synthetic version in which I exposed the details without going too deep into the technical part, so we can understand what was the role of Werner Heisenberg in the development of nuclear weapons for the Third Reich. So first of all, I will go a bit into context. The Nazi Germany started more or less by democratic means, not really democratic, but more or less by a democratic election, but very quickly it degenerated into a fascist, very brutal anti-human rights regime, invaded Poland and threatened half of Europe and half of the West stability. So something had to be done to stop this from spreading around the world. Albert Einstein, who was a German Jew, very well known for his 3 publications on general and restricted relativity between 1905 and 1915, wrote a letter to the US President Roosevelt. Actually, I recently learned that he did not write this letter. This letter was written by 2 Hungarian scientists, and they just asked Albert Einstein to sign it because they knew they are no one, so the president will not read a letter by 2 Hungarian scientists. So Albert Einstein accepted, he signed this letter and sent it to the President Roosevelt, who after reading the letter, it seems that this was the turning point after which he decided to make a big investment into the Manhattan Project to build atomic bombs and to get into the Second World War with this new weapon. After 3 years of big investment and a lot of scientists involved in the Manhattan Project, they built 3 bombs. One was detonated in the Los Alamos research laboratory in New Mexico, and the other two were detonated in Japan. This is one, little boy. This is a fissile this is a uranium bomb, and this one is the little boy and fat man, and this is an implosion plutonium bomb that was also dropped in Japan. And this is an actual footage of the dropping of one of the bombs. I think it's the first one, the one in Hiroshima. And after the war finished, the world considered that Werner Heisenberg was working for the Third Reich, even if in several interviews he said that he was trying to sabotage the Uranium Project by not reaching criticality in the many experiments they did, but he did not admit that he did this to sabotage the regime. What he said is that he did this because he thought it was not a good idea for the war. He thought that the best way to win the war for Germany was to use conventional weapons, so that's why he did not make any progress in the research of nuclear weapons, because he didn't want the Hitler government to make a big investment on this technology. And then this paper was published by Manfred Popp, who is a German scientist. More or less, he holds the position that is the nowadays position of Werner Heisenberg. It's the corresponding nuclear institute of Germany, more or less, that was in the past the founder of the Uranium Project. And in this publication, he gives a lot of technical details. He goes through the Heereswafenact, which is the technical report that was written by that Uranium Project. And he finds details that were, it seems, no one noticed before, mainly the historian community, because they did only read the introduction and the conclusions, which seems are written in a very different manner than the actual content of this report. It seems there is the technical report with the advancement of all the scientific experiments, and then there is the introduction which is mostly political, which says in a very enthusiastic manner that they are very close to reach criticality and the program is going very fast. And even they mention something that the historians interpreted as the intention to build a bomb, but actually it's not. Actually, it's the description of a malfunction of a reactor, kind of a critical runaway, which is what happens when a reactor gets out of control. This is not the correct way to design a nuclear bomb, not at all. This is the Heereswafenact. This is one of the original copies that was recovered many years later in Moscow. It was taken from Berlin during the Russian invasion of Berlin by the Red Army at the end of the Second World War. And here we have a transcription and a translation into English of the content of this report. And if we go through all the content of these 144 pages, we see that there is not at all fast neutron physics. So they only talk about slow neutrons that are only useful to build reactors and to produce electricity or energy in more general sense. But to build a nuclear device that can be dropped with a plane, for instance, you need fast neutrons, which is the approach that was used in the Manhattan Project. Here, fast neutrons are almost not mentioned at all, and in none of the experiments they are considered. So it's very hard to say that they were pursuing the building of a nuclear device when they don't deal with fast neutrons at all. So what was the role of this man? Was he purposely sabotaging the Uranium Project? He's Enrico Fermi. A few years before, he ran successfully a chain reaction in a reactor in United States using slow neutrons. So at the moment it was normal that most of the scientific community in the world work in, sorry, I said fast neutrons, I meant slow neutrons, or also called thermal neutrons. So all the uranium club, who were the scientists working in the Uranium Project in Germany, less than 100 scientists, all of them were working with slow neutrons. There is only one mention of fast neutrons that, I will go to the next slide. There is only one mention of the fast neutron concept, and actually this was displayed in a conference by Werner Heisenberg. In the report of the conference, or the article that he presented for this conference, there was some mention of the difference between slow and fast neutrons, and this could be considered as the proof that Werner Heisenberg knew how to build a nuclear device, but later, from this document, the 2 or 3 transparencies that show the concept of fast neutrons were hidden or lost for many years. Around, I'm not sure about the year, but I think it was maybe at the 70s or 80s, these 3 transparencies were found by some historian. And Werner Heisenberg was told, hey, we found the 3 transparencies we didn't know they existed before. They are from your presentation, and they show the physics of fast neutrons in a nuclear chain reaction. And with a big smile, he said, wow, I'm glad you found them. It's obvious. Actually, he attached these 3 transparencies in the report of one of his co-workers. I mean, you can lose a transparency, but you cannot lose it and attach to the report of another colleague. I mean, I think it's obvious that he wanted to show to the history that he knew about this technology, but he did not want to use it during the Second World War. And this is one of the experiments that the Uranium Project was running in order to reach criticality. These hanging things are cubes of uranium that are inserted into a pool of heavy water, and surrounding it there is some reflector of neutrons and some moderator. And they never reach criticality, and I have no time to explain the technical reasons, but if you watch the long video, I go through all the technical reasons. But it's not because they could not, it's because they didn't want. Because if you look at this experiment, there is no safety measures to protect workers in case of criticality. There are no absorber rods, so in case you reach criticality, you cannot control it. It could go out of control and have a runaway, exposing everyone to a very high dose of radiation. So it seems that Werner Heisenberg had the enough material, enough moderator, enough uranium, all the knowledge, and all the time to reach criticality. But after, I'm not sure about the number, but it's around 10 or 15 experiments, none of them is even close to reach criticality. So probably he did not want to reach criticality. And this is one of the, I was talking before about the transparency that was lost after a presentation by Werner Heisenberg, in which we see in the top the concept of slow and fast neutrons. And here it's a device in which you could reach criticality. I'm not sure if this is considering slow or fast neutrons. I think it's slow neutrons. So this is one of the experiments that was run in Germany to test if it was possible to reach criticality. I think these are stack of layers of uranium with layers of, I'm not sure if in this case was graphite or some paraffin. But anyway, it's something that works as a moderator. So this was lost for many years. It seems Heisenberg really didn't want anyone, apart from the scientific conference, to see that this was possible to run a critical reaction with fast neutrons, because this was the very correct idea for a nuclear device, the one that brought the Americans to build the two bombs dropped in Japan. So what is my idea? Werner Heisenberg. We have four options. The first one, the one that has been accepted by the let's say historian community since the 92, when the Heereswafenact original document was recovered in Moscow, and now is Werner Heisenberg was a Nazi. He wanted to build the bomb, but he could not build it because he lacked the knowledge, he lacked the economical support, or whatever. This can be dismissed because it seems they totally misunderstood the technical document from the Uranium Project. So we are left with three options, the option 2, 3, and 4. Option 2, this is actually what Werner Heisenberg says himself in interviews after the war. He is a Nazi. He thinks the bomb is not a good idea for the Third Reich, so he sabotages the project so they cannot reach criticality, and the government loses interest on this line of research. Well, I think this is unlikely. I did not give the reasons why this is unlikely, but at the beginning of the Nazi government, around in the 30s, 1930s, the anti-Semitic politics started, and many scientists fled to US, and among them many colleagues from Werner Heisenberg. So at this point he was very close to leaving the country to continue his research in US, but he had some colleague that told him, please stay in Germany because this war, the war didn't start yet, but I mean this time will end, and we need someone that keeps alive islands of science and knowledge in Germany. And I'm literal with these words. This was told by one of his colleagues in exactly these words. And later the wife of Werner Heisenberg complained. Actually, she was very unhappy with him because she said, for his career and science is more important than his family. And well, I'm very sorry, but yes, he was a Nobel Prize and one of the best scientists at the moment. So yeah, he made a choice. Maybe he put in risk his family, but I think he did the right thing for the humankind. And actually, the SS, the secret police from Hitler, was spying him because he was considered not to be a very National Socialist alike supporter. So once they called him to the central headquarters of the SS in Berlin, and they interrogated him. This was a really scary moment because when you are called by the SS to be interrogated, you really don't know if you are going out from there. But well, they knew they needed him because without him there was no Uranium Project. And they kept looking at him very closely because they knew he may not be very friendly or very supporting with the regime, but they let him free because he was all they got to develop nuclear technology. So for me, this is the evidence that he was not a Nazi. I mean, if you're a Nazi, you are not called in the SS headquarters to be interrogated. and probably tortured. He was not tortured, but most of people there, when they are called to be interrogated, they suffer some kind of psychological or physical torture. Okay, so for me, the first option is ruled out by evidence. The second one, we don't have evidence to rule it out, but for me, it's 90% probability that it's not true. So for me, it's either 3 or 4. So option 3, he's not a Nazi. So he decides that Hitler must not have this kind of weapon, and that's why he sabotages the scientific research. And option 4, he's not only not Nazi, but he actually doesn't want this kind of technology to be in the hands of anyone in the world. So he decides not to develop nuclear weapons. And that's why he hides the slide in which he talks about fast neutrons. So no one will have it during the war. But many years later, anyway, someone else developed the bomb. So what's the point? Right? So what's your opinion about Werner Heisenberg? I don't think he was a Nazi. I think he is someone who must be remembered by someone good in the history, someone who tried to avoid this weapon falling in the wrong hand, but not only this, probably he tried to avoid this weapon falling in any hand at all. I hope you like this small presentation or short presentation. If you have any comments, please, we can discuss them in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.